Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting right into something a lot of you might be navigating, dating after 60.
Yeah,
And we're not talking about the fluffy stuff. We're looking at advice that, well, you might hate hearing, but it's probably true.
that's right. We've been looking at this really interesting discussion on the 60 Me YouTube channel. It's got Margaret Manning, Ken Solon, he's an author and dating coach, and Lisa Copeland, who's a love coach.
And what's great is you get both sides right. A male coach, Ken, and a female coach,
Yeah.
Lisa, both talking about dating over 60.
Exactly. So our mission, if you will, for this deep dive is to pull out those key truths, the sometimes uncomfortable ones.
Right. The stuff that can actually help you get some traction and maybe
Yeah.
avoid some of the, common headaches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's dive in. One of the very first things Ken brought up was needing an enormous amount of stamina for senior dating. That kind of jumped out at me. Stamina.
It's a good place to start, actually. It means, well, it's not necessarily going to be effortless. You need to be prepared to, put in the effort, be resilient when things don't work out immediately. It takes persistence.
Okay, persistence, effort. Got it. And sticking with the potentially awkward stuff,
Yeah,
they went straight into talking about sex.
they did. Ken mentioned something he hears from female clients that sometimes the men they date just aren't interested in sexual intimacy anymore.
Wow, okay. That feels like a pretty big disconnect if that's important to you.
It really is. And Ken stressed you kind of need to have that conversation, maybe generally, but fairly early on.
To see if you're on the same page.
Exactly, to gauge compatibility there. Because otherwise, invest time and emotion and then find out there's this fundamental mismatch.
He had that apples and oranges analogy.
Yeah, that was it. If you're fundamentally different in what you want or need there, it's probably not going to work. It's a core thing.
Makes sense.
And Lisa, she added that, physical intimacy does change with age for everyone.
Right. That's normal.
So it often requires a bit more, maybe, creativity, finding different ways to connect intimately. It's not always about sex in the way it might have been years ago.
That actually connects to something else Lisa mentioned. Some women worrying they aren't sensual enough compared to younger women.
Mm-hmm. That pressure, that comparison,
Yeah, like it's a competition they feel they're in.
which, might not even be what the men they're meeting are actually focused on. And this sort of led into another, let's say, delicate topic.
Why some older men date younger women.
Exactly. Lisa shared what she's heard from men directly. Sometimes it's about wanting to feel appreciated.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Explain that a bit.
Well, her point was that women, especially as they get older, often become super independent, really capable, which is great.
Of course.
But sometimes maybe the habit of actively showing appreciation for a partner can kind of fall by the wayside. It's subtle.
I can see that. But Ken had a different take, didn't he?
Eh.
A bit more cynical.
Yeah, Ken's view was maybe less charitable. He suggested for some men, it's more about chasing that feeling of youth, or maybe, the status of having a younger partner, the arm candy idea.
Okay, this sort of fountain of youth thing.
Right. But he also warned that those kinds of relationships, the ones built just on that, they often lack real emotional depth,
And probably don't last.
unlikely to be sustainable. Yeah. He even brought up the money side of things, that without a real connection, those relationships can just fizzle out financially or emotionally. The foundation isn't there.
So, bottom line from both of them seemed to be, if someone's clearly just interested in the superficial stuff.
Let them go. Yeah, you can't force a genuine connection. Don't waste your energy.
Right. Which, speaking of how you approach dating, led to this really interesting debate they had. Ken thinks the first date should be partly an interview.
Yeah, that word interview definitely sparked some reaction from Lisa.
I bet. My first thought was, whoa, that sounds like a job application, not a date.
Yeah. Exactly. Lisa's point was, look, that can be really off-putting. You might scare someone off or miss out on just developing a nice friendship, even if romance doesn't spark immediately.
But Ken clarified, right? He didn't mean grilling someone with questions.
No. His idea was more about how you talk about yourself, your experiences. You share things that naturally reveal your values, what you're looking for, your lifestyle, and you listen for the same from them.
Okay. More subtle. Listening for clues, kinda.
Right. And Lisa did sort of agree that if you are seriously looking for a long-term partner,
You do need to figure out the big stuff fairly early.
yeah, you don't want to waste months finding out you have totally different life goals or non-negotiables. So it depends on what you're looking for, partnership versus just companionship or fun. You need that clarity yourself first.
That makes sense. Be clear on your own goals. And that actually ties into another piece of advice, mostly for women, about dropping the Superwoman act.
Letting go of that persona in dating. Ken was pretty strong on this.
He thought it could be a turnoff.
He did. He felt that projecting this constant, I don't need anyone, I can do everything myself vibe can sometimes push men away.
Okay, but why? Lisa had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, Lisa explained it well. She said many women develop that strength out of necessity. Life requires it for self-reliance, self-protection.
Totally. It's a survival skill sometimes.
Absolutely. But the paradox, she suggested, is that sometimes that same strength makes it hard to be vulnerable, to let a partner contribute, to meet some of your needs.
Finding that balance between being strong and letting someone in.
Exactly. Independence versus interdependence in a relationship. And part of that, they both stressed, is about not being overly critical.
Oh, yeah, the criticism point. Ken's analogy was pretty stark there.
The Chinese water torture one?
Yeah.
Constant nitpicking just wears down the connection?
Definitely. It's about supporting each other's interests, too, right? Even if you don't share the same hobbies.
Yes. Mutual respect, encouragement. You don't have to love everything your partner loves, but you should support their passions.
So for those really successful, maybe type A women, the challenge is learning to receive, to let someone else take the lead sometimes.
That's a big part of it. It's not about giving up your power, but about allowing a different dynamic, creating space for partnership.
And Lisa pointed out there's a benefit there too, right? Feeling cared for.
Yeah, that feeling of safety, of being looked after sometimes. It's a nice aspect of partnership that you might miss if you're always the one in charge of everything.
Okay, so that was advice mainly aimed at women. What about for the men? What do they need to hear that they might not like?
Well, Ken's big one for men was, don't come on too strong too fast.
The rushing in thing.
Exactly. Don't try to fall in love on the first date. The point is to get to know someone first. See if there's actually potential there.
Take it slow. Makes sense. What else?
He also advised against, the grand sweep you off your feet gestures on date number one, like overly expensive dinners or big romantic pronouncements before you've even had a real conversation.
Focus on connection, not just showmanship.
Precisely. And that naturally brought up the age-old question.
Who pays for the first date? Always a fun one.
Always. Ken leaned towards treating women as equals, which kind of implies a more balanced approach, maybe splitting it.
Okay. But Lisa,
Based on her experience in coaching, said, well, a lot of women she knows still appreciate or even expect the man to pay, at least initially.
right, tradition still holds for some.
But then interestingly, Lisa also mentioned that some women might actually be a bit put off if the man insists on splitting, even if they don't say anything.
Oh, really? So it's tricky. Unspoken expectations.
Very tricky. So it seems like there's no single right answer. The kind of concluded it's still debated. Offering to split might be a safe way to avoid pressure or obligation on either side for that first meeting.
Yeah, keeps it neutral maybe. Okay, so wrapping this up then, let's quickly recap those tough love points for dating after 60.
Okay, so number 1, you need stamina. Be prepared for the effort.
Right. 2, talk about intimacy needs generally, but early on, apples and oranges.
3, appreciation matters. Show it. And maybe notice if you're receiving it. Why are they interested?
4, communication style. Don't interview, but do share and listen. And definitely avoid constant criticism.
And 5, navigating those expectations around independence, gender roles, who pays. It's all still evolving.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. And like we said, maybe not always easy advice to swallow.
Not at all. But it comes from experienced coaches seeing what actually happens out there. So it's grounded in reality, even if it challenges how we might want things to be.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Considering all this, what's maybe one assumption you hold about dating now at this stage that might be worth, I don't know, reevaluating?
That's a great question to sit with. Could be about your own approach, what you expect from others, or even what a great relationship looks like for you right now.
Food for thought. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these ideas. Maybe check out that original 60 and Me video too.
Absolutely. It's all part of the journey.